I'm going to ask the ushers or the tellers, if you have not already done so, to distribute the blue resolution committee's response to resolution 3. Do you all have copies of that? If you do, hold them up. Most of you do. Maybe the tellers could be available to hand out. If you don't have one, raise your hand and they will give this to you. If you will recall, early in the business session, we had under consideration resolution 3 in your resolution docket, and it was referred to a committee to study, and if possible, bring back a recommendation while this General Council was in session. The chair asked our General Secretary to do this and to assemble those whom he felt would be helpful in drafting a substitute resolution for the action that was on resolution 3. So since this matter was referred, it's now back before you, and I would like the chairman of the Resolutions Committee or whoever on the Resolutions Committee is going to present this. Okay, if we could have the Resolutions Committee present Resolution 3. Oh, the General Secretary reporting on behalf of the committee is going to present it. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I do appreciate the chair of the Resolutions Committee, Don Diedrich, being willing to be on the committee we pulled together and met last night and this morning again, as well as a number of other persons. You have in blue a suggested resolution, a response resolution that we're submitting to you from my committee. And to read the resolution will be Michael Nelson, who is on the Resolutions Committee and the chair of the National Black Fellowship, and Glenn Reynolds, pastor, who was the author of the substitute resolution that was on the floor yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is in response to committee response to Resolution 3, African American Executive Presbyter. Whereas the African Americans make up 13% of the U.S. population, 35.4 million, of which over 300,000 blacks, approximately 10%, are members of the adherent of the Assemblies of God. And
whereas representation of that growing constituency is desirable on the executive presbytery, and
whereas the broadest possible number of candidates for those offices and broadest participation in voting for those officers, and also desirable in order to effectively represent such a large and diverse constituency, and
whereas the General Council already provides a working mechanism for representation of an ordained female minister and a minister under 40 years of age, therefore be it
resolved that the General Council Constitution, Article 9, Officers and Presbyteries of the General Council, Section 2, Executive Presbytery, Paragraph A, Composition and Terms in Office, page 100, which currently reads, A, Composition and Terms of Office. The Executive Presbytery shall consist of the General Superintendent, the Assistant General Superintendent, the General Secretary, and the General Treasurer, the Executive Director of the Assemblies of God World Missions, the Executive Director of Assemblies of God U.S. Missions, together with 14 other persons to bring the number to 20. The terms of office for all members of the Executive Presbytery shall begin 60 days after date of election and shall continue for 4 years or until their successor qualifies.
Be amended to read, A, composition and terms of office. The executive presbytery shall consist of the general superintendent, the assistant general superintendent, the general secretary, the general treasurer, the executive director of the Assemblies of God World Missions, the executive director of Assemblies of God U.S. Missions, together with 15, strike 14, other persons to bring the number to 21, strike 20. The terms of office for members of the executive presbytery shall begin 60 days after the date of election and shall continue for 4 years until their successors qualify.
And it be further resolved, the General Council Bylaws, Article 2, Election of Officers and Presbyters, Section 2, Nomination and Elections, Paragraph C, Non-Resident Executive Presbyters, Subparagraph 2C, Additional Representation, page 108, which reads, C, Additional Representation. The nomination process for 2 additional non-resident executive presbyters shall be made as follows. Each district council at its annual meeting prior to the general council session may nominate 2 individuals from its district to the executive presbytery, one who is an ordained minister under 40 years of age at the time of election, and one ordained female minister, no age requirement. From the nominees, the general presbytery shall select and submit to the general council 4 names of ordained ministers under 40 years of age at the time of election, 4 names of ordained female ministers, no age requirement. The candidates shall be presented to the general council in session and voted on by secret ballot. A 2/3 vote shall be required to elect.
Be amended to read, additional representation. The nomination process for 3, strike 2 additional non-resident executive presbyters shall be made as follows. Each district council at its annual meeting prior to the general council session may nominate 3, strike 2 individuals from its district to the executive presbytery. 1 who is an ordained minister under 40 years of age at the time of election, strike and 1 ordained female minister, no age requirement, insert, and 1 ordained African American minister, no age requirement. The members of the executive board of the National Black Fellowship shall also be considered nominees for the African American ordained minister. From the nominees, the general presbytery shall select and submit to the general council 4 names of ordained ministers under 40 years of age at the time of election, strike and 4 names of ordained female ministers, no age requirement, insert, and 4 names of ordained African American ministers, no age requirement. The candidates shall be presented to the general council in session and voted on by secret ballot. A 2/3 vote shall be required to elect.
Mr. Chairman, I move for its adoption.
Okay, the committee has moved for its adoption, and since it's coming from a committee, it's acceptable. I see first there was a microphone at number 4 speaking for the action. Please, microphone number 4, identify yourself.
Walter Harvey, Wisconsin Northern Michigan District and National Black Fellowship. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I stand to support the committee's resolution because it accomplishes several things. And as I stated, as the Vice President of the National Black Fellowship, I can speak on our behalf that we operate by a motto that states, we don't care who gets the credit as long as God gets the glory. As our President Michael Nelson passionately and personally lives out and reminds all who know him that we are the Assemblies of God and not a part of the Assemblies of God. There are 5 reasons why I favor and recommend adoption of the resolution. First, it ensures an African American will serve on the executive presbytery. The original resolution, number 3, and this one are not just about representation, but about the purpose of reaching the lost. For example, the first whereas in this new resolution clause states the masses of lost humanity which matter to God, and I know they matter to this fellowship, as all souls and all lives, including black lives, do. We collectively will, as a result of the passing of this resolution, through our churches, our districts, our fellowships, and the entire General Council, we can and we will identify, develop, partner, and send qualified African American leaders into the harvest and as representatives of all the above entities. The second reason why I support this new resolution is that it follows the Assemblies of God polity and procedure for all those who are serving as executive presbyters, whether they be geographical, non-resident, under 40, or female. Third reason I support the resolution is that hopefully it ensures that the intent of the original resolution to have an African American presbyter would have an urgency attached to it in the light of the current conditions of African Americans and the urban areas of our nation. There's an urgency, not for us, but from us. There's a cry in our nation for help, for hope, and for leadership. The crisis and the results that we are experiencing in our nation is a crisis of leadership. As we know, everything rises and falls because of leadership. God's answer to the cries of his people, as in the days of slavery in Egypt, was to raise up godly leadership in Moses. We cannot afford to wait any longer. The National Black Fellowship felt an urgency and had hoped that the collective body's action could have been taken at this General Council, yet we remain on the front lines if, when, and until this resolution is accepted. The fourth reason that I support the committee's resolution is that it allows this General Council of Churches, this deliberate body, to participate in a broader sense than the previous resolution, which also accomplishes and affords the majority the very same thing that the minority often ask: do nothing about me without me. That is the essence of being in a deliberate body. And as a result, you get what you get. May God help us as we move forward in future elections. Fifth, I support the committee's resolution because it includes the duly elected executives of the National Black Fellowship. It is true that the National Black Fellowship does not represent all blacks in the Assemblies of God, as many of our churches and ethnic adherents that are not members of the executive presbytery approved ethnic fellowships, some have chosen to self-identify as black and African American, and others have chosen not to identify or participate. Yet that door of opportunity and participation remains open. But it does represent many in our fellowship, speaking about the National Black Fellowship, and it has labored for 35 years in cooperation with districts, with churches, with constituents, and this General Council. And it now will have nominees from its executive officers. Finally, Mr. Chairman, it gives the General Council of Churches, especially the National Black Fellowship and districts, an even greater opportunity to partner together to build the kingdom that we have been collectively called to do for the sake of Christ, and to live out the meaning and the intention of the resolution to reach the lost in urban America. It also assists the younger generation. As was stated in this council, 50% of our adherents are under age 35. This younger generation are just as much the Assemblies of God as any generation, and it gives them the context upon which to build and to become more active. We recognize as a National Black Fellowship that we must not answer questions that they are not asking, and that we must not just recite the history of our predecessors. There is a scripture about a Pharaoh who rose up who knew not Joseph, and there certainly is a generation today that knows not the struggles of the past eras of history, and perhaps see no need for the process or the polity of the assemblies. I pray that this resolution will become a motivator for action and lessons in which we saw God glorified in the past, and may we seek to repeat those. And where we have failed to embrace the God-given opportunities, let's never walk there again. I pray that this resolution and any debate about it perhaps may come in the form of comparison of the addition of one more additional executive presbyter, a debate that is centered on the growing size and the scope of the executive presbyter would be sifted and measured in the scope of the past, a past history of contributions of a people, particularly African Americans, in regard to this fellowship that have labored alongside of the leaders for the past 35 years. May it also be weighed and sifted in the light of the present problems that people who are seeking representation are suffering from, as they did in the book of Acts chapter 6, where the Greek-speaking widows were being neglected. I pray that the debate, if any, be sifted and weighed in the light not only of economic excuses, but which are often an easy road to table, or for the sake of time or further thought or financial prudence. As in Acts chapter 6, they saw the opportunity not only as an economic, prudent decision, but as one that was led by the Spirit of God. This resolution is not about affirmative action, neither is it about tokenism. The message that we can send, as they did in Acts chapter 6, is that we are one. And if our brothers and sisters are suffering, let's go to them and resolve it. And the result, then, may it also be here, that the church would continue to grow in great grace. Mr. Chairman, I stand to speak in favor of the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is at microphone 7 someone who wishes to make an amendment or other. Microphone 7, please identify yourself.
Yes. My name is Renee Brathwaite. I am the Dean of the Ohio School of Ministry. Mr. Chairman, I am in full support of this resolution as it is before us. However, if it would please the chair, I would like to make an amendment to the framing of this entire paragraph. Specifically, the word representation, which is the title from line 18. I would like to suggest that that changes from representation to perspectives, so it would read additional perspectives. There are 2 reasons for this. One, the truth is that no one person can be expected to represent all, and that's really, from my perspective, an unfair burden. Number 2, representation can in fact be a very divisive word that can unnecessarily separate us or give the impression that there is a separation between us.
Chair is going to, I've conferred with the parliamentarians, and what we are, the proposed change would have to be made consistently throughout the bylaws, which are not the subject of this particular resolution. In addition, what is being asked for would be substantially different because the perspective is much different than a representative. The resolution is calling for persons who represent various constituencies, not represent various perspectives. So thank you for your willingness to come to the microphone, but Chair would rule the amendment is not acceptable.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next is microphone number 8, speaking for the resolution. And after you speak, if there's no one to speak against it, the chair will put it to a vote, because we try to do alternating back and forth. So microphone number 8.
Yes, Telvin Howe, Hampton, Virginia. And I'd just like to speak in favor of the resolution, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I entered into ministry about 16 years ago, I was told by several individuals and close family members, including my mother and father, that the Assemblies of God was not a place for a black man. And that if I wanted to succeed as an African American, that I would need to go to a denomination where it was all like me, predominantly black. And so at that moment, I had a choice to make. I could either stay and believe the best about the Assemblies of God, or I could go into a place of everyone that looked just like me. And so I chose to believe the former, to believe the best about the Assemblies of God. And today I stand here as an ordained minister. That's not to say that my journey has been easy. Matter of fact, I've had lots of challenges and equities that I've experienced over those 16 years. And also personally, married to a Hispanic wife, we constantly face questions. And matter of fact, even recently, my wife has been asked many a times, is she my children's babysitter rather than their mother? And so we understand about the struggle of inequity. And so I believe that this resolution will do a lot to bring us to what it says in Galatians 3:28, that there is neither Jew nor Greek nor slave nor free, but we're all one in the body of Christ. I believe by doing that, we submit it to the same process as the female executive presbyter and the under 40. There's equality in that aspect, but also I support it in the fact of that it forces those ministers that are African American that may feel marginalized. Hopefully it brings together relationship between those that are not African American and those that are, to build relationship. And so for that aspect, I choose to believe that, for this whole body, that we are not like our history and that we're better than the sum of it. And I believe instead of looking back, this resolution looks forward. And I believe that in a country that's really divided recently with racial tension, I believe that this resolution will make a huge statement saying that we are one in the body of Christ. So I speak in favor of this resolution.
Thank you. There have been 2 persons that have spoken in favor of the resolution, and no one is at a microphone to speak against. Are you ready for the question? I'm going to call for the question then, because in alternating back and forth, it is appropriate to go yes and no. All those in favor of adopting this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Those who are opposed, please say no. Motion is carried, and let it be noted the motion was carried unanimously. I heard no votes. This General Council has been filled with so many memorable moments. And this is a moment I certainly will never forget. Thank you.